Hi everybody, Deathblade here. So this is the first of my Yin Yang China series where I'm talking about the positive and negatives of China, mostly geared toward people who are living in China and experiencing that culture as an outsider, as an expatriate, as a foreigner. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is being stared at. Now, anybody who has even traveled in China knows about this. You know, sometimes it can be fun, sometimes it can be frustrating. One thing I want to point out before I start talking about it is I'm actually a person who is probably a little bit more immune to being stared at than the average person. Let me explain really quickly. My grandfather was a war veteran, and sometime in the mid 1940s, when he was overseas, he caught polio. He ended up being in an iron lung for a long period of time, and when he was finally out of that iron lung, he was basically a paraplegic. Early on, he lost the complete use of his legs, but had some of the use of his arms. By the time I was born, many years later, he had lost, I would say, something like 90% of the movement in the one arm and had something like 50 to 70% of the movement in his other arm. For all intents and purposes, he was a quadriplegic. The disease had ravaged his body quite badly, so he was very emaciated and sort of shrunken sort of. He was actually very, very tall, like 6'4", but he was kind of shrunken up and he was in a wheelchair. And so that was how I knew him. To me, it was actually pretty normal. But living in the same city and very close to my grandparents, I did a lot of things with them, whether it was going to SeaWorld or the zoo or to baseball games or whatever it was. I was the one to push my grandfather in the wheelchair whenever I was with him. I thought it was, I liked it. I thought it was an honor. I thought it was cool. I enjoyed pushing his wheelchair until he got an electronic wheelchair, and then it was a different story. But anyway, the point is just for anybody who has lived with a person in the family who is different in some way, you will know how you get stared at even in the United States. So I grew up with that and I was a little bit more immune to it. However, after you move to China, if you are a foreigner of any type who looks even remotely not Chinese, you will get stared at 100% for sure, no matter what. And you know, it at first, if you're traveling in China, maybe it can be kind of fun and cool. You're like, wow, people come up to take a picture with me, hee hee. But after the years wear on, it gets to the point for a lot of people where it's just really, really annoying. Now, for me, I have kind of dark hair and dark eyes. If I wear these glasses, I don't look super foreign. I have friends in the city who are way more foreign looking than me. You know, I've had friends who are blonde haired and blue eyed. I have friends that are black. Black guys and guys with blonde hair and blue eyes get stared at way more than people like me who have dark hair and dark eyes and kind of look vaguely Asian. But even so, I get totally stared at. And then if you want to add a level of attracting attention, I would say that something that gets very close to the level of either having really dark skin or having really light hair and blue eyes, on the same level of that is having a foreign looking baby. So baby Deathblade is currently about 2, and he is obviously, to anybody who can see him even from a distance, he's obviously not Chinese. He's mixed, he's half Chinese, but he does not look typically Chinese at all. And Chinese people are like eagle-eyed when it comes to spotting people who are not Chinese. I mean, seriously, like an eagle that is 5 feet away from a mouse would probably be less observant than Chinese people when it comes to identifying foreigners. And so no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, people just don't stare at you. And again, it's not like in America. I'm kind of obviously putting everything in the context of America. I know not everybody out there is from America, but at least in America, I think it's relatively sort of not uncommon for people to kind of look, you know, out of the corner of their eye at, for example, when my grandfather was in the wheelchair and I was pushing him. But they don't stare at you. In China, they do. So that's one of the frustrating aspects of living in China. You have to deal with people staring at you constantly at the grocery store, walking down the street, when you go into a restroom, when you go to buy tickets, when you're getting a cab, all the time. Now, the upside to that is that, well, you get used to people staring at you. And that's actually, I'm totally serious about that. After a couple of years here, I really stopped noticing. And I didn't really start noticing again until baby Deathblade came along, and then it became even worse, where people would congregate, come over to stare and then start talking and pointing out. That kind of stuff happens just for ordinary foreigners, but with a baby, it's way more exaggerated. And so anyway, you have to get used to it. If you're the kind of person who is sort of introverted or a little bit self-conscious, you will either sink or swim. And if it's a swim aspect, then you're going to come out of it having grown as a person, you're gonna be more confident, I think, in yourself. And heck, if you're the kind of person like, you know, the main character of the novel I'm translating, A Will Eternal, he loves to show off and he loves to be the center of attention. If you're that kind of person, then hey, China is the perfect place for you, because you will have an audience wherever you go and no matter what you do. So this is the end of my first Yin Yang China video. I hope that it was helpful to any of you who are interested in learning about Chinese culture and living overseas. If you have any questions or comments about this, please feel free to leave them beneath the video, and I'll see you in the next video.